Millions of mock drafts have already taken place, so we have millions worth of ADP data. So what I want to do today, I want to go through the first 8 rounds and give you the must draft players. Pretty simple. Let's get into it. The question of the day here, just for you guys at home, let me know down in the comments, who's that one player, whether if it's in the early rounds, the middle, or the late rounds, who's that one player you're destined to? I'm gonna leave my fantasy drafts with X player, whether if it's something obvious like Christian McCaffrey or whether if it's something obscure like Kirk Cousins. Let me know in the comments who's that one player you're targeting in every single one of your drafts. Kicking off here in the first round, again, we're going to do the opposite of this on Wednesday. So if you want to see the opposite of this in the early rounds this week and then the late rounds next week, we're going to take care of that on Wednesday. But in the first round, I'm not going to come out here with an obscure claim. Any one of these players on the right side of your screen are going to be great options for our fantasy teams this year. You can make a legitimate case that all 12 of these guys can be top three or even number one at their position by the season's end. So I'm not going to waste your time there. But if we're going to nitpick, we'll do that on do that on Wednesday. But let's get into the second round here. Second round here, I'm going to go with my must draft player as Jonathan Taylor. If you watched my rankings videos where I went through 80 different players and broke down their situations, I love Jonathan Taylor. I think he's going to be a top three running back this year. You have a dynamic quarterback next to him. That's going to take eyes off of him. They still have a great all line. They have a lot of talented receiving options on the outside that you might look at first glance and say, well, they're only going to take targets away from Jonathan Taylor and take the ball out of his hands. That's true. But that's also going to lighten the boxes. So when this team does run in this RPO heavy scheme, Jonathan Taylor just needs to make one or two cuts and he's going to have a pretty big season. So Jonathan Taylor, I love his situation. Now over here on the right side, you see these blue boxes around Chris Olave and Saquon Barkley. These are just my top three must draft players in each round. Hopefully that's pretty simple. Round three here, and I'm going to get this out of the way because Kyren Williams, technically based off Fantasy Pros ADP, is a third round guy. Every single mock draft I've done, he's been a second round pick or even a first round guy. So I'm going to say if he's a third round pick in your draft for whatever reason, if he's on the board, you better do whatever it takes to get Kyren Williams on your team. But outside of that, let's talk about a guy that's on the thumbnail, and Derrick Henry. That's a guy that is 30 years old. It's going to be his ninth season in the NFL. He has tons of mileage on his body, and now he's going to a new team. History tells us that running backs 28 and older, that they're going to a new team, they don't really have a lot of success. But Derrick Henry's going to the Baltimore Ravens, a run-focused scheme. It's going to be a run-heavy offense, I believe, here in Baltimore. And if Gus Edwards last year can manage over 1,000 yards and 13 touchdowns, imagine what an older but still elite Derrick Henry can do. That's my only argument there. I think he's going to have a great season. He's going to score a lot of touchdowns. Is he going to be getting 300 carries like he did in Tennessee? No, right? But he's going to get more effective carries here in Baltimore, if that makes any more sense, at least for us fantasy players. Cooper Kupp as well. I love his upside, especially if he's going to have this bounce back level season that he's saying he's going to have. And in the fourth round, Josh Allen. This is where I like to target quarterbacks is the late third round, early fourth round. Now, Josh Allen's a guy that has gone in the early second round in some of the mock drafts I've done, but he's also fell into like the late third. According to ADP, he is an early fourth round pick, and because of that, he is the must draft player in this round. You know, this is a guy that is going to have to be Superman, Batman, Thanos on a weekly basis if this team wants to stay relevant and compete for a playoff spot, let alone going towards the Super Bowl. Josh Allen is going to have to be the MVP of the league. He's lost Stephon Diggs this offseason, but again, that's not really going to hurt this offense as much as people would think. Last year, when this team changed offensive coordinators, they were more so of a run focus. They took care of the ball a lot more that second half of the season, and they're going to use Josh Allen when they need to use Josh Allen. In the fifth round, I think, again, I'm going to go back to the quarterback. Well, it is Patrick Mahomes for the simple fact that he's the quarterback two on my board, right? He was the quarterback six early in the offseason, or quarterback five. But when I really take a step back, Patrick Mahomes has never had this much help on the offensive side of the ball. You have a star running back in Isaiah Pacheco, a great offensive line outside of maybe the tackle positions. You have Travis Kelce, who's still elite, even though he's on the latter half of his career. You have all of this speed on the outside. He hasn't had this much field stretching speed probably ever in his NFL career. Tyreek Hill was one man, and he is the fastest if you're looking for a field stretcher. But now you have two of them. You have Hollywood Brown, you have Xavier Worthy, you still have Rashee Rice, who I haven't talked about. So you're going to have so much weapons around Patrick Mahomes. And this is a team that is chasing a three-peat. If he can stay healthy, and if the majority of these options can stay healthy, not to mention McCole Hardman resigned, that's another field stretcher. This is going to be a dangerous offense. It's going to be a fun offense to watch. But for fantasy football, Patrick Mahomes just needs to do the bare minimum, it seems like, in this offense. And he's going to be a top five fantasy quarterback in the sixth round. Dare I say it, but it's going to be Kyle Pitts. This guy has been a fantasy headache his entire career here in the NFL. As he was a top five pick, we thought he was going to light the world on fire. Well, let's just say he's only lit our fantasy teams and our lineups on fire on a week-to-week basis. But he's in a better situation now here with Kirk Cousins coming in, Raheem Morris and his staff coming in, and they've made it a point to say, we want to feature Kyle Pitts the way he should be in this offense this year. But even when we take a step back and we look at Kirk Cousins' career as a quarterback here in the NFL and the situations he's been in, whether if it was in Washington, he favored Chris Cooley, throwback the name of the day there, and he also favored a guy like Jordan Reed when he could stay healthy, another Gators tight end, so go Gators, right? But then in Minnesota, whether if it was Kyle Rudolph or whether if it was TJ Hockenson, he favors the tight end position in fantasy football. He makes those guys relevant. And dare I say it, Kyle Pitts is by far and away the most talented tight end he's ever had in his career so far. So I love the upside of Kyle Pitts in the sixth round. And if this year isn't the year for Kyle Pitts, well, it's never going to be the year. So outside of that, Rachaad White, of course, PPR monster. He should be there, but I do worry a little bit about the Dave Canales leaving there in Tampa Bay. How is that going to change how that offense operates? Is Rachaad White still going to get a lot of catches underneath? Something we got to look out for. Alvin Kamara is a top 15 running back for me going into the year. If you can get him in the sixth round, amazing. In PPR, he's arguably a top 10 running back. So getting that in the sixth round is an absolute steal. In the seventh round, I'm going to say David Montgomery. Evan Engram is a great pick. And if I could go back, I'd probably change it to Evan Engram. But I am a David Montgomery fan at heart. No connection to him really, but I just like David Montgomery. He's a power back in this offense. And I do want to throw this out there because in the seventh round, you are going strictly kind of for upside from the sixth round on. But I said, hey, Dave Montgomery gives you that upside and stability, and you want that on your team sometimes. It doesn't always need to be boomer bust players. And I wanted to put Montgomery here in the spotlight because this is the guy that, if anything happens, hopefully not, if anything happens to Jahmyr Gibbs, though, David Montgomery's in an offense with probably the best O-line in football, some solid options out the outside. You have a great blocking tight end there in Sam Laporta as well. And this is a run-focused offense primarily. So if anything happens to Gibbs, David Montgomery goes into being a top 10 running back on a week-to-week basis. But okay, let's say injuries don't happen. This is still a top 20 guy on a week-to-week basis, in my opinion, in David Montgomery. He's still going to be the power back. Sure, the PPR upside is not there, and that's why I would say in a half PPR or standard formats, this is the guy that you draft. You're happier you draft a guy like David Montgomery outside of a full PPR format because that job is Jahmyr Gibbs in this offense, and we know that. But I think just from a high floor and a high ceiling kind of a pick here in the seventh round, I do like David Montgomery. But Evan Engram, I like him just as well. If I don't have a tight end in my drafts by the seventh round, Evan Engram's going to be the guy I look at because he's just a PPR monster. He led the tight ends in pretty much all statistics last year. And if he wasn't leading the pack, he was top five in those major statistics. So Evan Engram, again, would be probably the go-to guy in that situation. And then in the eighth round, we're going to talk about James Conner. Might be a shock here because this is a team that you see Kyler Murray, you see Trey McBride with his season he had last year, and then they go out there and draft Marvin Harrison. Why are we talking about their running back here? Well, I think if you really deep dive into how that offense operated second half of the year last year, and that includes Trey McBride's breakout, this was a run-focused offense. At the end of the day, John Gannon, their head coach, is from that Kyle Shanahan tree, right? He comes off of that tree in those systems. This is a run-first, pass-later offensive scheme. And James Conner, as of right now, even though they drafted Trey Benson, which I love Trey Benson, this is going to be a run-focused offense, and James Conner is going to be the number one in this offense. And there's still plenty of opportunity, just like last year, for him to get a lot of receiving upside here out of the backfield with, of course, Kyler Murray as his quarterback as well. But some other guys here I love in this round. Joe Burrow, Najee Harris, Zamir White, Dak Prescott, Jonathan Brooks now has Dave Canales there as his quarterback, as his head coach, excuse me. And all running backs have thrived under Dave Canales. So John Brooks, definitely a great sleeper option. And of course, if James Conner wasn't here, John Brooks would actually be my eighth round selection. Mr. Consistency and Tyler Lockett, and of course, David Njoku down the board as well. Those are all guys that I love here in the eighth round. But mainly James Conner, he's going to be the head honcho in this backfield. I just love his stability and upside. Just a quick recap here before we get out of here. Round one, any player. And outside of that, you see some running backs, some quarterbacks, a tight end, and of course, some more running backs as well. On Wednesday, before we get out of here, I'm going to be doing the reverse to this, the landmines you should be avoiding in fantasy football going into next season. And who knows, we might even revisit this idea here at the end of right before the season. But the very last thing, again, question of the day. Who's that one player that you cannot leave your draft without? Let me know in the comments. I'm excited to see what you guys think.